Not so chatty.
The ambassador is not available for interview.
Mr Sadeghi to pay the price for his regime's vicious attempt to sow social discord in Australia by orchestrating attacks on Jewish targets.
This is the first time in the post-war period that Australia has expelled an ambassador.
3 other Iranian diplomats also given 7 days to leave the country, notwithstanding ASIO's view that they had no involvement in the attacks.
The embassy was not involved. No Iranian diplomats here in Australia were involved in this.
The expulsion of Mr Sadeghi and 3 colleagues is perhaps the least Australia can do in response to Iran's political interference.
ASIO assesses it is likely Iran directed further attacks as well.
This mother of 2 who fled Iran over women's rights 25 years ago and who was today denied a visa to visit her homeland, saying Australia should go further.
And I think they should close the embassy.
In June, the ambassador insisted Iran's argument was not with Australia.
Friendly nation of Australia and the government of Australia that they are peace-loving nation.
One, he'll soon leave. Ambassador, thanks very much.
You are very welcome to come.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Andrew Probyn.
Or 2, Australia has been attacked at the hands of a foreign country. ASIO and the federal government declaring Iran is responsible for at least 2 attacks on Australian soil, a Melbourne synagogue and a Jewish kitchen at Bondi. Iran's ambassador has been expelled and Australians in Iran have been told to leave, with the Prime Minister calling the firebombings extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression. Our team of reporters is following this story. Our political editor, Charles Croucher, begins our coverage.
2 attacks, 2 Australian cities, 1 source, Iran.
These were extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil.
ASIO determining 2 attacks that tore at the heart of Australia's Jewish community last year were directed by the Iranian regime. The arson attack on a Bondi kosher cafe last October and the firebombing of the Adass synagogue in Ripponlea 2 months later.
Iran and its proxies literally and figuratively lit the matches and fanned the flames.
It's true that no one was injured in these attacks. It is not true that no one was harmed. Simply, Australia was attacked and Australia was harmed.
Tonight, Australia set to declare Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps a terror organisation, Iran's ambassador and 3 others, given 7 days to leave the country.
We have declared Iran's ambassador to Australia persona non grata.
We are entirely united behind the measures announced today.
The motivation for the attacks, ASIO says, fracturing Australian society and isolating Jewish Australians.
There will be great anxiety that we have been targeted in such a callous and calculated way by a ruthless and violent foreign force because of who we are.
Any attack on our social cohesion is an attack on Australia.
The Greens choosing this moment to call for another expulsion.
The mass famine that they've caused in Gaza must be grounds to take the same action against the Israeli ambassador.
Some arrests have already been made and authorities suggest there are more to come.
ASIO is still investigating possible Iranian involvement in a number of other attacks.
Initial investigations suggested organised gangs were partly behind the attacks. Some of those accused paid for their acts.
What we have said is there's a direct connection that the IRGC are directing through a series of cutouts people in Australia to undertake these crimes.
As Australians, we need to wake up and realise that even though this has been targeting Australia's Jewish community, any community could be the next target.
Charles Croucher, 9 News.
Iran's ambassador to Australia is the first to be expelled from our country in 80 years.
Since the terrible events of October 7, 2023, we have witnessed a number of appalling anti-Semitic attacks against Australia's Jewish community. I've made it clear that these sorts of incidents have no place in Australia and that I wanted ASIO and the AFP to investigate as a priority. ASIO has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of these attacks. Iran has sought to disguise its involvement, but ASIO assesses it was behind the attacks on the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Sydney, on October 20 last year, and the Adas Israel Synagogue in Melbourne on December 6 last year. ASIO assesses it is likely Iran directed further attacks as well. These were extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil. They were attempts to undermine social cohesion and sow discord in our community. It is totally unacceptable, and the Australian government is taking strong and decisive action in response. A short time ago, we informed the Iranian ambassador to Australia that he would be expelled. We have suspended operations at our embassy in Tehran, and all our diplomats are now safe in a third country. I can also announce the government will legislate to list Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, as a terrorist organisation. I've said many times that the Australian people want two things. They want killing in the Middle East to stop, and they don't want conflict in the Middle East brought here. Iran has sought to do just that. They have sought to harm and terrify Jewish Australians and to sow hatred and division in our community. The actions of my government send a clear message, a message to all Australians that we stand against anti-Semitism and we stand against violence, and a message to nations like Iran who seek to interfere in our country that your aggression will not be tolerated. I'll hand over to the ASIO Director General, Mike Burgess, and then hear from the Foreign Minister and the Home Affairs Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. In this year's annual threat assessment, I warned Australia's complex, challenging and changing security environment is becoming more dynamic, diverse and degraded. Dynamic because we're confronting an increasing number of threats. Diverse because some nation-states are using criminal proxies to undertake acts of foreign interference, espionage and politically motivated violence. Degraded because authoritarian regimes are more willing to engage in reckless, high-harm activities. Unfortunately, all three of those characteristics apply in this case. For the past 10 months, anti-Semitism has been one of ASIO's most pressing priorities, involving the full use of our capabilities and powers. We have investigated dozens of incidents targeting Jewish communities, places of worship, businesses and prominent individuals. ASIO now assesses the Iranian government directed at least 2 and likely more attacks on Jewish interests in Australia. Our painstaking investigation uncovered and unpicked the links between the alleged crimes and the commanders in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. The IRGC used a complex web of proxies to hide its involvement. This is the sort of obfuscation and boundary blurring I warned about earlier this year. It's important to understand that ASIO is both a collector of intelligence and assessor of intelligence. Formal assessments such as this one are not done quickly or taken lightly. Our analysts carefully weigh and weight every piece of intelligence. In this case, their conclusions are clear. ASIO is still investigating possible Iranian involvement in a number of other attacks, but I want to stress we do not believe the regime is responsible for every act of anti-Semitism in Australia. It goes without saying, Iran's actions are utterly unacceptable. They put lives at risk, they terrified the community, and they tore at our social fabric. Iran and its proxies literally and figuratively lit the matches and fanned the flames. I want to assure all Australians that ASIO and our law enforcement partners take these matters extremely seriously. You do not just have the right to be safe, you have the right to feel safe.
Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Can I first thank the ASIO Director General, the AFP Commissioner, and of course my colleague, Mr Burke, for the work they've done on this issue and to keep their and the work they do with their teams to keep Australians safe. Even before today, the Albanese government had taken stronger action on Iran than any previous Australian government, and we have long known that Iran and its proxies try to destabilise countries in our region and beyond. The Director General has now outlined the conclusions of ASIO. Iran has sought to undermine the cohesion of our community They have tried to divide the Australian community, and they've done so with acts of aggression that not only sought to terrify Australians, but put Australian lives in danger. And keeping Australians safe is our number one priority. There is no doubt that these extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression, orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil, have crossed a line. And that is why we have declared Iran's ambassador to Australia persona non grata, as well as 3 other Iranian officials, and they will have 7 days to leave the country. This is the first time in the post-war period that Australia has expelled an ambassador. And we have made this decision because Iran's actions are completely unacceptable. We will continue to maintain some diplomatic lines to advance the interests of Australians. In relation to our embassy in Iran, Australia has had an embassy in Iran since 1968. And at that time, and since that time, it has never been an endorsement of the regime. It has been a channel to advocate for our interests and for our people. However, the government has now taken the step to withdraw our ambassador to Iran, and we have suspended the operations of our embassy in Iran for the safety of our officials and Australia's border security. Australia's officials are, as the Prime Minister said, now in a third country. And I thank these DFAT officers and their families for their service and for their fortitude. Since 2020, Australians have been advised not to travel to Iran. Our ability to provide consular assistance is extremely limited. I do know that many Australians have family connections in Iran, but I urge any Australian who might be considering travelling to Iran, please do not do so. Our message is, if you are an Australian in Iran, leave now if it is safe to do so. This has been a distressing time for many Australians. I again thank ASIO and AFP for their efforts. The Albanese government has been so determined through this period to keep our community united.
I know the significant amount of work and analytical rigour that goes into ASIO assessments. This is an unprecedented attack on our society. It's aimed at creating fear, stoking internal divisions and eroding social cohesion. It's true that no one was injured in these attacks. It is not true that no one was harmed. The community of the Adass Israel Synagogue was harmed. The community that shopped at the Lewis Continental Kitchen and the owners were harmed. The Jewish community were harmed. Other communities who were blamed were harmed, but simply Australia was attacked and Australia was harmed. There is anti-Semitism in Australia. It is real, it is debilitating. Yet this attack was driven by anti-Semitism that originated in Iran. That said, nothing changes the fact that it was an anti-Semitic attack, and nothing changes the fact that the impact is identical.
Attack on our social cohesion is an attack on Australia. We are proud of the country that we've built, a country where people can live overwhelmingly side by side of different faiths, of different background, in harmony. We cherish it, we protect it, we defend it, and that's what we're doing here today.
By the Foreign and Home Affairs Ministers, plus the head of ASIO, Mike Burgess, revealing that a foreign government, Iran, and its Revolutionary Guard Corps were using locals here in Australia to stir up anti-Semitism, including attacks in Sydney and in Melbourne. Joining me now, Sky's Andrew Clennell, who's been across this all day. I mean, you've got to ask a question that you asked at the beginning of the day, Andrew, where to start. I mean, the timelines maybe. Our embassy in Tehran, the ambassador and the staff, they all got rushed out of the country, flown to an undisclosed third nation. You wonder when the government first was alerted that they had to do that.
Yeah, they must have known for a while, but ASIO